Hello folks, today we're going to talk about apricots, canning apricots, and I think they're the absolute most perfect fruit ever. This color is wonderful. I mean, really, anything that's this orange has got to be good for you. I've gathered my best looking apricots here. These actually come from a grand tree, a tree that's probably at least 50 or 60 years old. It has no pesticides on this fruit, no fertilizers, nothing. They just grow like this and they're simply lovely. I'm going to wash these first and then I'm going to slice them and put them in some water before we actually start canning them, putting them in mason jars. Apricots, when they're cut open, will turn brown from oxidation. So they need to be in a solution that's got some acid in it before I put them in the jars. What I usually use is about a quart of water and about 1/4 cup of lemon juice. So let me put my lemon juice in here. There we go. Now that I've got my lemon water solution here, I'm going to slice my apricot open. Apricots naturally have a little seam on them. This is where I'm going to start with my knife here. And I like a paring knife, a short bladed knife like this. Just slice along there. And these guys open up nice and easy. Take the pit out and just pop them in the water. They're going to sit there till I'm ready to put them in the jar. These are my apricot pits. I actually throw them in my compost pile or in the garbage. Do not put them in your garbage disposal. They don't like these little guys. These are really hard and you can mess it up pretty good. Apricots need to be canned in a fluid. And what I usually make is what's called a simple syrup. Simple syrup is just sugar and water. I also can in honey also. But for the purpose of today, I'm using sugar. It's what I have on hand. I usually use 2 cups of sugar and 5 cups of water. I actually like using distilled water, not necessarily tap water, just taking out those minerals or anything that could cause discoloration of the fruit. If you've ever canned apricots, you might have noticed that the fruit floats to the top of the jar. Well, that's because inside this apricot flesh is air. Seems kind of odd, but there really is air in there, and that's why they float. If I actually heat the fruit up in that simple syrup before I put it in the jar, it'll stop the lifting of that fruit. Or if it doesn't stop it altogether, it'll certainly help. So I'm going to hot pack them or heat them up now before I actually put them in the jar. My simple syrup is boiling now, so I'm going to put my fruit in one at a time here and heat them for about a minute. I've heated our fruit, so now I need to put it in the jar. So let me show you how I pack the fruit in the jar. I first start by placing them down like this and kind of just stack them one on top of another. I use a spoon to help guide me. This is what my jar looks like when it's full. I take it up to about this rim, the widest rim on the jar, and then I'm going to fill it with the syrup. I'm going to ladle the syrup in here. It's also important not to overpack the fruit inside the jar because you're going to have expansion when it cooks. So I put my first little bit in there, kind of shake it up. I'm going to need to get all the air out of the jar here. My first thing that I always do is I just shake it back and forth. I also want to get down here and look at this ring, and I want to fill this up to about the second ring or the middle ring right here in the jar. I need to leave some room for the fruit to expand as it processes. Man, that looks nice. Love it, love it, love it. Some books tell you you can use like a plastic knife or plastic fork to get the air out of the jar. I use a bamboo skewer. So let me show you how I do this. Just go around the side. Do I see any air? Just kind of helping it lightly guide out. And no, I do not. This one looks good to go. I'm ready to process. After I've taken all the air out of the jar, I may have to add a little extra syrup here. So let me take a look here. Remember, I want to be halfway between that bottom ring and the top of the jar. Just a tiny bit. Perfect. That's all I need. This got sticky when I put the syrup in, and I want this a clean surface when I put the lid on. I just run my finger across there. Man, nice and clean and squeaky. Lids, you need to actually boil them. Put them in some water, turn on the heat, bring them to a boil. My lids are boiled and they're ready to go. I take them out with a fork, put it on my jar here, and you put the ring on. The books will say fingertip tight. What's fingertip tight? It's how tight, and I usually say a woman, that a woman can put the cap on, or the ring on here, and tighten with her fingertips. I like processing both my water bath canning and my pressure canning here in my aluminum pot. This is really a good one. I also like it too because it has this little plate that goes in the bottom. Fits perfectly. The plate allows a small space, probably about 1/4 of an inch or so, from the bottom of the jar to the bottom of the pot here. This way the boiling water can circle around the jar, because if your jar sits directly on the metal here, it'll break. Next thing I need to do is I need to cover the jars. I need at least, an inch or so of water over them, or I like to think I want them at least as deep as up to my first knuckle. So that's what I use as my measurer. That's about right. That's about an inch or so. Okay. Directions for cooking apricots can be found on any USDA website or an agricultural university website like the Utah State. Well, I start to check to see if the water's boiling when I see steam coming around the rim of the pot here. Hold the lid away from you, not towards you. You don't want a steam burn. Yep, this is starting to bubble here. I usually wait until I have a full rolling boil. After the timer has gone off for my 25 minutes, I actually take off the lid there and just let it cool by itself for about 5 minutes or so. When that 5 minutes is up, I take my jar lifter. I would advise buying one of these if you don't have one. Don't put on a rubber glove and try to pull these out. This is boiling hot water, and this little device will make a nice little clamp around the rim of the jar to help lift it out. Let me show you how to do this. And I pull the jar straight out. Oh, aren't those pretty? And I put it on a cooling rack. As they cool, their contents are going to cool, which will cause it basically, for lack of a better word, to shrink. When that happens, it'll create a vacuum that will cause the lid to pop, which is the best sound to any canner ever, is the sound of the seal being made. What you don't do is put your finger on the top of this and make it pop that way. It has to do it on its own. So with that, I just kind of hold the vigil right now. Have a cup of coffee or something, because I'm just waiting for the most delightful sound ever.